guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to that.
We're on. So, guys, this is a unique intro because we're both laughing. And before we jump in here, I'll tell you why we're laughing here in just a sec, but we're live, we're recording, we're on Weed to No Basis. And if you're watching or listening, whether you're on YouTube or WeedTube, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, if you're here, it's because you're on a Weed to No Basis. Today, I have a cool guest, somebody I consider a friend, and she's across the country as we're talking. This is Jessie Gill. Jessie, give us the once over on who you are and why we're going to talk today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Rick. It's so great to connect with you here on video. I am, like you, a nurse. I am a cannabis nurse. I'm a registered nurse with a special focus on medical cannabis. And I'm the founder of the website Marijuana Mommy, which is a patient resource where patients can go and learn how and why to consume cannabis.
Love it. And this is a reminder, folks, and I'm very repetitive, you know this. If I'm looking down, I'm not sending texts. I write a tremendous amount of notes, and so I'm writing. Let me tell you why we were laughing. So because we're still kind of, I wanted to record while we were in mid-laugh. So we do a little pre-show kind of warm-up, and Jessie and I were talking, and I kept saying to her, don't overthink it, don't overthink it. And I finally said it like for the umpteenth time, and I think we both just started laughing because it's like, stop overthinking, saying don't overthink it, and we just started laughing, and that's why.
It's funny.
Yeah, we met in person, in 2019 in Jersey, right?
Yes, yeah, here in my home state.
Nice. Is that where you are right now?
Cannabis entrepreneur. Yes, I am a New Jersey lifelong resident.
Really? So you're born and bred, what do you call them? New Jerseyan, or what is it called?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think New Jerseyan, but I was actually born in Florida. So I am technically a transplant, but we came here when I was very young and then pretty much grew up in the town that I live in still.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, and I asked that because, I'm from California, but I've been in Texas for 20 years, but I don't have a Texas accent.
No, you don't at all.
And you don't have that proverbial Jersey accent either.
Sometimes I do. If I talk about coffee or dogs,
Yeah, then it's like, oh,
it comes through.
She's a Jersey girl.
True.
Cannabis Nurse.
Mm.
Cannabis Nurse. And your website is Marijuana Mommy.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm going to draw the connection here for the listeners or viewers here in just a little bit, but give us some background. Share with us like your, to the extent that you want to share, your cannabis moment, your origin story, how you entered or why you decided I'm going to be in this industry as a business owner, entrepreneur, nurse, consumer. Go.
So like so many healthcare professionals who've gotten into this industry, I came to it as a patient. I'm a former hospice nurse and I loved hospice. It was, my passion, my vocation. I was amazing at it. And I was injured in 2014 in a really bizarre random work accident. And I suffered, multiple herniated discs in my neck and extensive nerve damage in my neck, the back of my head, my throat, and my right arm. And it decimated my career. It ended everything. It ended my hobbies. I started going down that traditional healthcare system, and I really thought I was going to get better. I really believed that, it was just a matter of time before the doctors found some way to fix me. And, I went to my appointments. I followed through on all of the treatments. I took every prescription. Eventually, I had a multi-level spinal fusion, and it made me worse. I lost the ability to drive, and I started developing swallowing issues, and the pain, it just was constant and continued. And the doctors at that point said, well, we've done everything we can for you. Sorry, you're going to have to live, on opiates and Valium. And I was taking it around the clock. So every 4 to 6 hours, popping another pill to try to relieve some of the spasms. And I was taking things like Lyrica and, a whole bunch of other medications. And I was miserable and, suffering a lot. And I had tried every holistic treatment as well and every supplement. And somebody came to me and was like, you should try cannabis. They had a very similar injury and had great results. And I was like, that is ridiculous. Like, that's just, I'm an expert in pain. Like, if morphine doesn't help me, that's not going to help me. And my mother's also a registered nurse. And she's like, why won't you look at this? Like, why won't you consider it further? Why don't you explore this? You know, she said, God works in mysterious ways. And I was like, that's so cliche, but I'll look into it. And I was really surprised. I did. I started researching and I was like, okay, you know, I had experience with cannabis, you know, very negative experiences, like so many people. It was associated to a very negative time in my life. And I just didn't believe that if morphine couldn't help me, that cannabis was going to. And I was so shocked when I started reading the research, because there is a lot of legitimate research out there from, you know, just from the product Sativex, which, you know, is a pharmaceutical in like 38 other countries. And it's cannabis. It's a THC to CBD 1-to-1. And we have legitimate research showing that there is significant, you know, benefits to utilizing cannabis. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And, you know, I went and I got it. And the very first day I tried it, I was able to stop both the opiates and the Valium. And it was just amazing. And, you know, I always tell people it hasn't fixed me. Like, I still suffer a lot. I still have chronic pain. I still have nerve damage. I still have swallowing issues. I still can't drive because of the range of motion. But cannabis is actually a remarkable tool. And finally, I have this tool that can help me manage the pain. And, you know, through that ability to manage this pain, I was able to rebuild my life. And not in the same way, you know, I'll never be a bedside nurse again, unfortunately, but I am reaching so many patients on a massive, way more massive scale than I ever did before through Marijuana Mommy. So it's been a really, really remarkable journey. I never, ever imagined that I would be a cannabis nurse, but here I am. Just like my mom said, God works in mysterious ways.
Wow. You know, Jessie, I didn't know that. I mean, I've read through your website. I read through a lot of things. And of course we met, we spoke at the same event. And that's one of the reasons why I love these interviews, honestly, because you get to a different depth, if you will. Mm-hmm. You know, and I want to just touch on something, because you said your background is you were a hospice nurse. And for those of you out there who maybe aren't quite sure that again, we're both nurses, and this is no offense to folks listening. You know, some folks bunch us all into one big group. A nurse is a nurse, but a hospice nurse, you cared for people at the end of life,
yes,
right?
End of life care, palliative care, the people who were dying, the people who were suffering the most and were at the hardest point of their lives. That's, you know, who I had the privilege and the honor of, you know, touching their lives. And it was an incredible honor.
I got to say that is, as a nurse of 25 years, that is one of the specialties that is one of the most gratuitous, because you're with somebody at some of their families at their sometimes their most precious moments.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Wow. So I'm curious, before I dive into, I ask you more about Marijuana Mommy and all that, because I'm just really, and I know our listeners are too. And also you touched a little bit about a course you're launching. I want to talk about that. But so you were, my words, not yours, a very traditional Western medicine nurse, clinician, and an event changed you. I'm recapping. An event changed you, a traumatic event where you were injured, and you used that as a catalyst to explore alternatives in your wellness journey.
Well, I was a holistic nurse in the beginning. I just didn't have any, you know, knowledge of cannabis as a medication. Like, it wasn't ever covered. It wasn't covered in the holistic courses I took. It wasn't covered in nursing school at all. You know, I think there was like one slide that says CBD may help seizures, and that was like it, you know. I mean, that was so long ago, but you know, I just didn't have a knowledge of cannabis. So it was specifically cannabis that I had this stigma and this discomfort to. And I was also very, very concerned about, you know, the implications socially of being a cannabis patient. That really, really worried me.
Interesting. And we're going to touch on then how you went from A to B to C to D to becoming the Marijuana Mommy. And so you're wearing your a lab coat. Does it say like Marijuana Mommy on it?
No, it just says Cannabis Nurse. Jessie Gill, Cannabis Nurse.
I love it. Jessie Gill, Cannabis Nurse, aka Marijuana Mommy. That's just too funny. So do you have kids?
Yes, yeah. I have 2 kids. I have my son is 12 and my daughter is 23. She is finishing her master's at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So she's an engineering student, incredibly brilliant.
Holy geez, a 23-year-old and a 12-year-old.
I had my
So,
daughter very young. I was very, very young when I had her.
dang. I know you've
Mm.
probably heard this you've heard it all the time, but you look barely over 23.
Thank you. Love it.
So then, okay, I want to ask, so where does Marijuana Mommy come from? Like, how does that, give us the transition.
Good question. So when I discovered cannabis, I had already started writing, and I was writing about health information and a lot about, parental health. And so I was a blogger. I was, coming into the online industry. So I was very aware of keywords and, the usage of SEO in order to elevate your brand. So Marijuana Mommy was very much, it just was a natural progression because I was already writing about health and cannabis. And I really wanted to, I really saw a void for parents, for, specifically people at that time weren't speaking up. Parents were still afraid, and parents are still afraid now to speak up, when they're cannabis consumers. And, so I decided to start, pushing for those keywords. And Marijuana Mommy, the website, it was actually suggested by one of my daughter's friends. They're like, her website should be Marijuana Mommy. And I was like, wow, that's really cute. And, it was owned, somebody already owned it. And so I still had it. I had marijuanamommy.net, but I really wanted .com. And so, I was building my site actively and everything, but I kept reaching out to her. And I was like, if you're interested in selling it, I'd love to buy it. And eventually she sold the .com. But it was really SEO strategy, mostly Marijuana Mommy. It was keyword rich. It was something, an easy keyword to target at that point.
I love it. So, and this is your business now. I mean, so let me ask you, I didn't ask you this. Do you still do any patient care at all, or is it all just consulting through Marijuana Mommy and your courses, which we're going to touch on in a sec?
Yes, no. So my career, my patient care career ended with the accident, and I've never been able to go back, but I do have like an independent practice now. So I do independent cannabis consulting, all telehealth, all
Gotcha.
through like a secure server. But yes, Marijuana Mommy is my business. So we monetize, it's a blog, it's a website. We monetize in a lot of different ways. We do cost per click advertising, and we do a lot of affiliate sales. So if somebody comes to my site and clicks and makes a purchase, I will earn a commission on that specific product. So we monetize through that way. We do sponsored posts as well. And then also I do my one-on-one consulting. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I have a course that's just rolled out specifically for new patients. So they can come on, and it comes with 4 weeks of educational support from a cannabis nurse. And that's specifically directed for brand new patients who are just starting to explore cannabis, because so many like me are very, very worried about embarking on this medical journey with cannabis. And there are so many products out there, and people have no clue where to start or what to start with, or if they should use it at all. So the whole structure of the course is kind of to walk patients through that. So we talk about the history of cannabis as a medicine, because it has a really rich, robust history for, throughout human history, it's been used. We go through that. Then we talk about, the specific components, chemical components that make up the plant. People don't realize it's more than 400 different components make up cannabis. It's not just THC and CBD. So we talk about all the medical uses for that. We talk about the endocannabinoid system, which is an essential biochemical communication system that every human has, and that they don't teach about in nursing school or medical school. And then we talk about the products, which is a really important part of the course, because so many people just have no idea. They're like, okay, I'm going to use cannabis. Some people are like, oh, it's flower. Some people are like, oh, it's a tincture. Nobody has any idea. And a lot of people don't realize that how you consume completely changes the way that cannabis affects you. So it completely changes the therapeutic outcome. So we go through all of that sorts of stuff too. And then dosing, we cover that as well, because that's one of the most complicated issues with cannabis. And we can't really ever give somebody a dose or assign a dose because it's so individualized. So we go through the techniques and ways that we utilize to achieve that, to discover that perfect dose.
Love it. That was a lot, but it was very informative. And I'm glad that you're doing it to the depth that you're doing. Let me ask you this, a couple clarifying questions. So you're in New Jersey, right? And what's the current climate of cannabis, of marijuana specifically in your state?
It's a mess over here. So we have a medical program. You know, we had our governor, Chris Christie, for a long time, and the medical program came into being under Chris Christie's reign, and unfortunately it was squashed and destroyed. That administration didn't really have any passion to bolster it. So it suffered a great deal. And then we got a new governor, Governor Murphy, and he had promised to make cannabis legal recreationally within 100 days. That has not happened. That's not going to happen. He has expanded our medical program. So he has expanded access by adding anxiety and chronic pain as two qualifying conditions. So before it was very, very restricted. We had less than 30,000 patients, but since Murphy has taken office, it has ballooned. It has more than doubled in size. Unfortunately, yes, which is great because patients are getting more access. We have more physicians on board. There's no more public registry for physicians. So any physician can recommend. They do have to register, but they don't have to be listed publicly. So there's a lot of really great developments. We just got employee protections in New Jersey for patients, which is huge. You know, we have medical protections for patients who are on transplant lists. So there's a lot of good things that are happening here. Unfortunately, the access is terrible. So right now we only have 6 cultivation facilities, and it's a triple vertical in New Jersey. So our dispensaries grow, process, and retail. And we only have 6 cultivation facilities in the whole state for 60,000 patients. So, and there's no way even one of those cultivation facilities can handle 10,000 patients. Definitely not all of them handling 10,000 patients. So we are very anxiously waiting for that to change. We do have licenses up and coming, waiting for permits, waiting for their grows to, you know, we had one place just open, but they don't have any product yet. So I don't know. They're waiting for it to grow and then we'll be able to buy it. But so that is very, very frustrating. We do have recreational cannabis going to the ballot this year. So, you know, this year at the end of this year, people will be able to vote and legalize recreational cannabis. And we expect that to change the market a lot. Right now, patients are paying $500 an ounce, which is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And you know, we're limited to 3 ounces, but that's $1,500 a month that patients have to spend out of pocket for their medication. The majority of the people who need this medicine can't afford it. So we really are anxious to get recreational legalization up and running because we know that that's going to increase access and decrease prices. It's coming.
Gotcha. It is. It's a dot in a lot of states, I think. So let me ask you, as related to the course you shared with us, and just so there's some clarity for a lot of the listeners, like for instance, I'm in Texas and we don't have medical, we certainly don't have recreational. Is the course applicable, or is it applicable to just CBD? So, because we've talked about cannabis and marijuana as a medicine, as with their medicinal value. So when you talk about your course, are you specifically talking about the medical marijuana client, consumer, or patient? Is this applicable to a CBD person, in other words?
Yes, this is applicable for somebody who is just looking to consume CBD. So it's about medicinal cannabis, and, you know, hemp and CBD is the cannabis plant. I know that there's a big movement to separate it, to make marijuana and then hemp, but it really is all the same product. We talk a lot about, you know, both THC and CBD, but we do discuss CBD a lot. And I know it's heartbreaking when patients don't have access to it, because most patients do better with a combination of CBD and THC.
Gotcha. Okay. And I wanted to get some clarity for the folks who are listening, because we have I'm in Texas, and I mean, honestly, we have a lot of listeners here. They're all over the US, but I don't want somebody to say, well, I don't have access to medical marijuana, click, I'm done. So, and that's the beauty, I think, of what you're doing, is your education can cascade across the entire cannabis spectrum, if you will. So that's good to know. I am really curious about, let me ask you, so is the course launched? Have you actually launched this?
Yes. So people can go to cannabiseducationgroup.com and enroll.
Cool. And at the end, folks, just if you're driving, don't try to text yourself this. We're going to put all these links in the show notes at the end. So don't worry about having to remember this. Also, we're also going to put links to this at weedtoknowbasis.com, but we're going to be placing all of those links and the information, and especially how to get a hold of Jessie at the end of the show in the link. So Don't stress yourself, y'all. We need you to be listeners. We need you to stay with us. And don't be trying to do text and drive stuff. It's not good.
That's so dangerous.
It is dangerous. What do your kids think about you being the marijuana mommy?
You know, it's funny. They're very different. So my daughter is obviously older, and, you know, telling them was really, really hard because, you know, my daughter had obviously grown up with the stigma of prohibition, and I didn't know. And she was a little like, you're going to what? And she was already in college when I started cannabis, and she's like, you're going to what? But she knew how sick I was. And she's like, all right, well, I don't care as long as if it helps, whatever. And then as soon as she saw how much, you know, it helped, she was like a huge advocate, and she still is, you know, for cannabis, you know, in general, for medical marijuana, because she's seen how incredible, you know, how remarkably it's changed my life. My son, he was very little. So he was only in like third grade, I think at the time. Third grade. So he hadn't really been exposed to much of the prohibition yet. So for him, I really, really had to prepare him. He's definitely more uncomfortable with the topic. You know, my daughter's older. She doesn't care. She'll be like, oh, whatever. But my son, he is still a little like scared of what people are going to think. You know, he has people in his life, unfortunately, that are behave like staunch prohibitionists and say a great deal of negative things. So that breaks my heart to watch him have to endure that. So yeah, but you know, it's interesting because he too also witnessed how it changed my life, and has witnessed how, you know, it changes my life regularly. You know, it makes a really big, significant difference, something that you can physically see when you're interacting with somebody, you know, to see how they are before they utilize their medication and see how they are after. Seeing it is believing it, right?
Yeah. I love what you're doing, Jessie, and I love that message. We did an episode, I want to say probably in the 20s or 30s, somewhere way back then, and it was called The Birds in the Weeds. And it was, it's that type of conversation that, you know, I think there's a lot of like energy here, in that I was never part of the cannabis community. I was raised, you know, anti-cannabi, and so this was the devil's lettuce. And it was probably, give or take, around the same time where my mind began to shift and I became a consumer. CBD, mom, just so you know. My mom lives in Nevada. So, yeah, CBD, mom. Stay here, mom. Don't be scared. Kids, if you're watching this. No, but seriously, it's, you know, as a parent, I was raised, and in turn raised my children with the belief system that I was raised with. And it wasn't necessarily it's bad. It was just like, there are better choices. You know what I mean? And I think there's a difference. I wasn't raised like, avoid it like the plague. I was raised that there's other alternatives. And if you want to be a productive, you know, human citizen, then you would take this choice. And so, in other words, my parents always knew that we were going to grow up and we would make our own decisions. And so in turn, that's how we raised our kids. And when we entered this industry fully into the CBD side years and years ago, and now by virtue of just ping-ponging through the industry, it's just kind of all one big green ball. We did an episode, The Birds in the Weeds, and how folks or parents can talk to their kids in an authentic way and responsible way about, this is here and it's not going anywhere, period, right?
And it's essential that parents talk to their kids about it, because legalization is coming. And even if in the areas that haven't legalized, there is a robust illicit market, and it is there, and kids have access. And as, you know, legalization expands, that access is only going to increase. And, you know, I say often, I talk about this a lot, actually. I just had a column in the Star Ledger about this, about talking to kids. And it's so, so important because, you know, when you look at prohibitionist education, when you look at things like DARE, kids, it's done the opposite. It hasn't helped keep our children away from drugs. It's kind of propelled them towards illegal use. And, you know, it makes a very big difference to teach facts to kids, because one of the messages that, you know, these prohibition style education programs are sending is that cannabis is just as dangerous as heroin. And one of the great challenges is that kids see this and they say, okay, you're telling me cannabis is so dangerous, it's going to ruin my life, all this stuff. But I see Elon Musk smoking cannabis on TV. His life looks pretty damn good, you know? So they see it. They see people like me. They see people like us talking about it. They see industry people. You know, obviously people are using cannabis and their lives are not ruined. And, you know, I don't want my child to think that cannabis is anything like, heroin, or to think that heroin is anything like cannabis, because the problem is kids are like, okay, well, you lied to me about cannabis. Maybe you're not being honest with me about these pills. Maybe they're not that bad. So that's something that we really, really have to stress to kids. Like, we can't tell them it's the same thing and expect them, you know, to make accurate, responsible decisions based on that. We need to put up that delineation. We need to start teaching about cannabis the way we teach about alcohol. You know, that there needs to be a responsible approach, that it's for adults, it's not for kids, you know, except for medical use. But it's not something to be treated lightly, and there is the ability to overuse, and there are risks, and all of that needs to be communicated honestly to our children, or we're doing them a disservice.
I love it. You're pretty versatile, Jessie. And, you know, I mean, beyond being an RN and a practitioner and a consumer and an educator is, you know, what is being teased out here by this conversation is you're also a parent and a mom. You know, you've got you're multifaceted, and that makes you a multifaceted, like, I don't even know, entrepreneur in the space. I'm learning more and more as we go. And I got to agree with that. The kids wholeheartedly is, you know, we do what we do as parents. We teach them what we believe is right and wrong, whatever your belief system is. And then we hope that they make the right decisions. And yeah, cannabis has become, it's my daughter. As we speak, she's in Paris, France, like right now on this conversation. So she's, she went there to London for work, and then she went to Paris. And so it's funny, but the conversations we have, she's grown, she's 20, she's married, and 3 years married is often it's around cannabis, specifically CBD. But even as I tell you that, it's still mind-boggling that I have a conversation like that with my kids. They're still our kids, you know, they're still this big in our minds sometimes. And so it's a
They always will be.
Brave new world indeed. I can't let this go without being said, is that, you know, you mentioned blogging and writing, and when we spoke before and I'm looking over at my other computer screen because I don't want to mess this up. You've written and been published in or featured in magazines like Forbes, like Green Entrepreneur, which is the latest offspin of Entrepreneur magazine, which I'm an avid reader of. Good Housekeeping, Cosmopolitan. I wanted to mention that because our audience, this is the time for you to shine. One of the reasons why we do this show isn't for me. It's so that we can shine the spotlight on people making a massive impact and doing things in a responsible and ethical way. So Cosmopolitan, I'm curious. I don't read that, but what was the topic, or what was the subject of, and how was it framed?
It was I think there's been a couple, but one of them, well, you know, there's been a few. I've written so many things. So I had, like, one of my first pieces was about being a teen mom, and that one, you know, that one was in Cosmo. But one of my first cannabis ones was in Cosmo, and that was about, I think the headline was something like, I'm a better mom because I use cannabis. Something to that was the headline that they chose. But it was about my story about being a mom and becoming a cannabis patient, and how it, you know, changed and improved my life. And so yeah, there's been a bunch. So I've been very, very fortunate. But yeah, I love so much when my cannabis content goes mainstream. That just fills me with joy, because, you know, the mainstream people, those are the people that really need me the most. Those are the people I look to guide new patients, and the people who know nothing about cannabis, like, that's who I want to come and talk to me. Like, those people who are just a little bit curious and are starting to explore it, they need legit guidance.
Love it. That could even be another course of yours. If, you know, now my entrepreneurial mind is going off on shiny objects. Yeah, you have a very distinct niche and expertise in you know, the actual product and the plant, but SEO, you mentioned SEO and writing and blogging and all those things. That is a skill in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Did you just learn that on your own? Like
all on my own.
Really?
All on my own. Yep. I lost my career. I couldn't do anything else. I always had the talent and skill of writing. It was always my passion and my love. So I always knew I could do that. So I just started like freelancing little bits. I had to, and then, to really get freelancing jobs, I, knew I had to build a blog and a portfolio. And that's why I ended up starting to do that. And I learned WordPress, and, it's amazing the things that you can learn on YouTube. I always say, like, I learned so much. I learned WordPress from 10-year-olds on YouTube, because you go on and it's like all these little kids like that are teaching you stuff. It's amazing. But those are the best videos, because they're really, really step-by-step for you.
Very cool. So this is just emerged maybe in the last few years?
2015.
All right. So just to give our listeners some context. So you weren't necessarily a lifelong blogger, SEO expert, this
Not
and
at
that.
all. I knew nothing about it at all. When I
Gotcha.
got injured, that's when I started learning. I didn't start with WordPress, although I do recommend everybody start with WordPress and not the other ones, but I started with something easier, a drag and drop builder, just to get started. Transferring it over was a nightmare, but it was something. But yeah, I taught myself everything. Camtasia, I do all my own editing and stuff like that. It's
Holy
crazy.
geez, Jessie. I think I don't know whether now to continue talking about medical cannabis and the responsible consumption, or about SEO and how to be a kick-ass blogger and writer. This is pretty cool. And, wow, this is really good. So the course, it's available, and just for clarity again, the course I'm referring to is the course that is for your patients and the consumers, not for SEO or writing a blog. That is live on your website now. It's like people.
It is live. It's on not on Marijuana Mommy. It's on its own URL. It's cannabiseducationgroup.com.
Okay. Gotcha. And again, we're going to put links, but I just wanted to make sure that when we publish this episode, that people can actually say, well, I went there and it wasn't live yet, Rick, but it is, it's good to go. Is that the only course you have, or is this?
So far, yes.
Gotcha.
Far, but there are more in the works.
Gotcha. You care to share anything? Drop some.
There is a blogging course in the works.
Really?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
And a cooking course. That one's further behind the blogging course, but a cooking and extracting course.
Wow. So you have yet the little bag of tricks just keeps getting deeper. The Jessie Gill bag of tricks.
We haven't even talked about my pipe shop yet.
Oh my God.
Do you know about my pipe shop? Did I even put it on there?
I think you mentioned it. I do know about it, and I think you did. I heard more about it when we synced up in Jersey. So
prettypipeshop.com. So prettypipeshop.com is my online retail store. It's all glass, and it's glass, affordable glass with a feminine edge. So, we look to target like women mostly, or females, and, people who are looking for those pretty styles that you don't see generally in every smoke shop.
Gotcha. And that's all online, or do you
100% online.
Okay,
I mean, we don't have a storefront. We have, storage, but not storefront.
Gotcha. So everything you do pretty much, except for maybe the one-on-one consultation where you're maybe on screen or talking to somebody.
It's on screen, yes, but it's still online. It's all virtual.
Business is virtual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had to be, because I lost the ability to drive, and I still haven't regained full range of motion in my neck. And that's really challenging in New Jersey. Some areas like where we met, we were in Newark, and public transportation is amazing. I can get to New York City, I can get anywhere. But where I live in the suburbs, it's much more challenging. Like, we don't have reliable public transportation a lot of places. And Uber and Lyft gets very, very expensive when you're using it for everything. So I really needed to create, businesses that I was able to do without incurring these massive transportation costs. So Thank goodness for technology. I mean, it's everything to me. But yeah, my consulting work, my patient consulting, is all through a virtual server. So telehealth.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you're doing. I love everything about it. I can't wait to look a little bit more into what you're doing. I'm going to dig into those other websites now. Remember, folks, we're going to put them in the show links here, and also on weedtoknowbasis.com, where this where our podcast is, our virtual home for the podcast. So share with us now, as we kind of begin to wind it up, over the next 12 months, what can we expect? Like, what's on the horizon? What's the dream? What's the vision for Jessie Gill and your businesses?
Oh, well, I think you'll see more and more. My dream is to go more mainstream, to reach out more mainstream coverage. You know, I want to, it's great and amazing to be in the cannabis circles. But like I said, the people who really, really need me the most are the people who are out there. So that's really one of my biggest focuses. And then, you know, to really grow my course and, you know, to level up Pretty Pipe Shop. That's coming as well.
Nice. So growth minded.
Growth, massive growth.
Very cool. Love it. I love that at the end of the day, there's an entrepreneurial spirit underneath all of the, all of the stuff we heard today. And it's all good. And great story, Jessie. I'm glad I got to hear it. I'm glad we're going to get to share it with the mainstream. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it, truly.
So tell us then, where do you want folks to find you? Whether it's Instagram, a URL. Remember, folks, we're going to put this all in the links down below.
Twitter is my favorite social media platform. So I'm at Twitter at marijuana_mommy. And then online at my website, marijuanamommy.com. Everybody can reach me. My email's on there. People can, you know, go ahead and email me if they have questions or, you know, are looking for more resources. I'm always happy to connect with patients. Very
cool. Love it. Jessie, I really, really appreciate your time. Being on here from Jersey, the Jersey girl. Is that a cup of coffee back there, or is that just water?
No, it's just water. Okay. I actually don't drink coffee.
Okay. I was trying to tease out a Jersey word for me. So, Jessie, it's so cool. It was so cool to meet you in person last year up in your neck of the woods in Jersey. It's even cooler that we're getting to reconnect here on the show. And I'm so looking forward to getting this message, your message, out to the mainstream and into the ears and eyeballs of people who need to hear what you're doing to move the cannabis community needle forward in a massive way. Really appreciate it, Jessie.
Thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate you and all you do, truly. I cherish our friendship.
Thank you so much. So folks, remember, as we're winding up, go back and listen to some of the other episodes, like the birds and the weeds, where we talked about how we've experienced talking to our children. But either way, you're here for a reason. You're here because whether you're watching or you're listening, you're here because you're on a weed to know basis. Thank you all for listening. Remember, there's no cost for this. Just make sure you're sharing this. Check the show notes out. Get in touch with Jessie. Y'all have a fantastic rest of your life. Peace.